you for coming to the second of our get-togethers in Manchester. The first one was in Edinburgh, which was some people have actually been to the Edinburgh one and come to Manchester as well, which is a remarkable thing to do. We're being stalked by people. So that's fantastic news. The next one is in London. There's a couple of questions about that, I think, coming up. But also we're delighted to welcome through the wonders of the interweb, the live stream. There'll be millions of people worldwide listening and watching us as we speak and field questions. So obviously today is all about, primarily all about Trident 3, the launch of Trident 3, which hopefully you all have an opportunity to have a good look at. But this Q&A is open to all questions. You can ask whatever questions you like, and we'll do our very best to answer them like the best politicians do. So no, literally it is open house. You ask away, and we try and do our best to answer. But again, thank you for taking the time and trouble to even come here. Really is appreciated. Guy, I think, is probably... I haven't even said hello to you, Guy.
That's all right, Mike.
So who wants to start the Q&A? Anybody with a question?
Is there a timeline for a bronze Mark III?
Yes, effectively it'll be 2020. We'll be running through. I mean, the bronze, as you probably know, has been an outstanding success in the Mark II, and the plan is that we think that will be running through the stock we've got sometime around the turn of the year, a bit later, and then we'll start thinking about bringing in Mark III. So yeah, there will be a Mark III coming in bronze. That's assuming that bronze remains as strong as it is in the world of watches. It doesn't seem to be abating. I mean, recently at Basel, it was quite remarkable, and many of you have picked up all. Did anybody go to Basel, by the way? No? Anybody follow it on things like a dinky and all that? I mean, you know, virtually every brand was now sort of including Tudor's bronze, Black Bay was a real success. So bronze does seem still to be gaining traction, and we were one of the first into it. So the trick is always to be first in, first out. So we keep watching those trends, but I think it's around for a long time. Anybody else? Any questions?
You came from different backgrounds.
Just the reason I know you probably can hear, but we're in Edinburgh. The live streamers couldn't hear the questions from the floor; they could only hear us answering them. So that's why we wanted to use microphones.
Fair enough. I'll speak into this.
So, very clear.
Two of you came from ELC, didn't you? That's your background. I'm not quite sure where Chris emerged from.
Nobody is. Nobody is.
Unfortunately.
How often have you regretted setting up Crystal?
I think in the very early days, we did.
My biggest regret is we went to Switzerland and Chris ran out of petrol on the way to see a supply, so I was a bit down on that day.
No, not often is the question. I mean, like any business, you have your ups and your downs, and your good days and your bad days, and your good seasons and your not so good seasons. But generally, we came from quite big businesses, and it took a while to get used to. We're having this conversation yesterday, actually, weren't we, with our bank. It takes quite a while to get out of the habit of being able to delegate to one of 30 people to do any task for you, to actually having to do stuff yourself again. But in reality,
They delegated everything to me.
yeah, that's true. In reality, I think what helped in that is it teaches you a bit of humility. You don't get too big for your boots. but also getting into the nitty-gritty of a business. If you're having to do everything at the beginning, you get a knowledge and an understanding of something, so that when you eventually are delegating it, people know that you know what you're talking about. And so it was a kind of a retraining, in a sense. It was a completely new industry and a completely different MO for us all. And I think it's never been less than rather enjoyable, frankly, for different things and different ways. Would you agree with that, Chris?
I do agree with it. I do agree. Is this switched on?
No.
What have you done?
Peter's our technical director.
I shall shout. No, I don't think there's been any regrets at all. I certainly can't recall any time where we've even all had a big fallout.
Oh, I can't. There's been a few of them.
No, I think it's a happy camp. It always has been.
Thank you.
Take the mic, sorry.
Microphone over here.
Good way of Alex getting the script.
Yeah, we think you need to lose a few pounds, so.
Hi guys, nice to meet you finally. I've been a fan for a long time, so I'm sure there's a few people in here that have been following Christopher Ward for 10 years or so. Obviously started off with a handful of models, and now you've got a vast array of different models and everything from pilot watches to dive watches. From a business perspective, does that make choices difficult in terms of how many different kinds of models you produce, and then all the way through to the pricing, and then whether these things sell particularly well and all the various different variations that you've got? How does that work from a business perspective?
Peter?
I'll answer that. It makes more life difficult than when you've just got one or two watches, that's for sure. But if your range structure is formatted in a way that's relatively simple to understand, and we've always had a view that a good, better, best, and even better than best policy. So, for example, if you took our Trident range, you'd have good quality watches at say around about the £395 mark in the quartz, the 300 version. Then better would be the Pro 600 with ceramic bezels. Ceramic.
Come on again.
You click and hold the button, I'll go.
Yeah, so the best would be, or the better would be the Pro 600 range with ceramic bezels, mechanical movements, maybe, which might be an SH21 perhaps, or maybe a better complication like a GMT. And then better than best, you've seen in our C7 range, something like the Apex and our SH21. So once you've got that in place, and then going sort of across the matrix, we divide our range, as you've seen, into aviation, dive, we've got motorsport, and we've got dress, and then there are a few other categories. So you begin to sort of build a matrix of the sort of range, and we've always followed that philosophy, and we've been filling the gaps.
I mean, Chris is right, but just remember, we've been used to, somebody, you mentioned DLC. Peter and I were dealing with 2,000 SKUs. Yeah? This is a doll. Yeah? The watch industry, I was in fashion for many years. You're dealing with 6 or 7 or even 8 capsule changes per annum. One of the brilliant things about watches is the life cycle of a watch is on average about 4 to 5 years. Some go longer, some shorter, and we don't like we don't like slow sellers, so we'll clear them quickly, which is not the norm in the watch industry. We bring that from our backgrounds, I think. So the plan that we've got for this financial year, which runs from April through to March, is there are only 95 heads. Yeah. Case by dial colours. We've got more SKUs because of straps. It's 95 heads. This is not complicated stuff. The watch industry would like to think it is, but we think because of our background, it's actually it's the simplest ranging exercise I've ever been involved in my 40 years in retail. So I love it. And it allows us to look at detail. The difference here is creating these watches, and if I'm proud of anything, and proudest of the team for developing Trident, because A, it's a real team effort. There's no, this is a collective effort to produce this, watches of these quality. But the level of detail that has gone into these watches is par excellence in my view. It's certainly my experience and our experience. And that's what separates the product from other products. The ranging is simple. You get things wrong, that's life. But we get most things right, touch wood, and have been so far. It's getting the details right that really matters, and getting the products absolutely as good as they can be. And you don't, it seems a lot, but actually, because unlike most other watch manufacturers, all of our products are visible all the time on a website, it looks like you've got quite a few because it's strap options. If I took you to Tudor, yeah, what you see is a very good, strong front-end sports range, whether it be Black Bay, Pelagos, etc. The real money they're taking is all in the Chinese market. Yeah, there's thousands of options that they don't even show. Yeah, and that's what they sell in huge quantity across the world. So most of these brands have got far more options than we have. It's just that ours are always on show.
I think back to normal retail, we only have one shop, so compared to LC, we used to have
216
shops, and we used to sell through generals and Sainsbury's and all that sort of stuff. So you've got a huge complexity. This is as simple as to complete. We still don't get it quite right economically, but as we grow, it becomes easier.
Hello.
Alex is going to be the star of the
There could be some fun to be had.
Are you going to do the Dominic version of this trial?
Yeah, good man.
Thanks for organising this and giving us an opportunity to go and meet you all. I've got a question about the in-house movements. Are you going to be developing that further, producing more watches, say, without giving any secrets away, something like the Trident, again with an SH21, or even variations of other new movements?
Yes and yes. I mean, there's I don't know if you've managed to flick through your advanced copies of Loop magazine yet, but in the brief section at the front, you'll see a C60 Apex, which is, those of you know, the C7 Apex was a 50-piece limited edition that sold out really before it even went on sale. This is a 100-piece limited edition based on the new C60 Mark III, which will have a power reserve version of the SH21 in it, in conjunction with Armin Strong. And Armin Strong are a remarkable Swiss brand and manufacturer who we have a really close and developing and very close relationship with. These guys are producing what that sell at 180,000 to 200,000 francs. More interestingly, they have, and if you ever find yourselves in Deal, and if you can get an invite into their atelier, it's 2 floors. It's about the same size as our atelier in Deal. We're exactly 7 minutes walk away from them. And what they have inside this atelier is virtually every single process for creating a watch. They have their own CNC machines. They're producing screws, on CNC machines. They also, and I've never seen this anywhere before, they've got, other than a plating house, they have their own in-house plating. Nobody does that. It's a quite remarkable place, and they're experts in skeletonizing watches in very small numbers, and therefore the Apex collection, which we started with the C7, in September we'll see the C60 Apex, and probably in 2020 we'll probably move on to aviation, because aviation will be completely reinvented in 2020. The Apex these are the top of our range. They'll all have SH21 in them, but more than that, they'll all be worked on with and skeletonized to some extent with Armin Strong. It'll be £3,500 watch, but honestly, that £3,500 in the hands of any other brand will be £25,000 to £30,000, and I'm not exaggerating. Why we work with them, why they choose to work with us, is we recognise an expertise that they have, which is unique. They recognise in Christopher Wood brand something that nobody. We give them a different challenge. We say, great, you've got to get that in at this price, and how do we create? And they're just like us. They love challenge. And the C60 Apex is 100 pieces. If you're interested and you can afford 3,500, not everybody can. This will sell. I think they'll be gone before they ever go on. So they're fantastic watches. Have a look at there's some sketches of it.
Oh, there's an article on this.
That's right, and if you do look at the Moon magazine and you do think you want one, I would advise you to give your name straight away to Scott, because I suspect they'll all be sold out even before we launch it.
I'm surprised. It's, so that's, in terms of developments of SH21 itself, what we've discovered is the power reserve variation is by far the best variation. People love the power reserve in terms of the two dial scenario. We aren't ruling out chronographs, we're not ruling out other, but these are, you know, creating these is really quite tough, and we've got so much mileage yet to get out of SH21. We want to focus on the power reserve really first before we devote so much time, energy and money to another one. It's such a great movement and it's really becoming consolidated now. But we don't rule it out. But we shouldn't underestimate the amount of time and money that's required to go to chronograph. Chronographs are the hardest complication to create. They really are very difficult to create. But we do accept the challenge and we have worked at it, but we're not ready yet.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hello, Guy.
Hello, Mike. Chris, Peter. I've got a whole host of questions put forward from guys on the CW forum who can't be here today. Some of them are over in the States or Europe somewhere. In no particular order. Couple of quick ones based on forthcoming models. You've touched on the Bronze Mark III C60.
Yeah.
Any plan to extend bronze into aviation and or motorsport?
Unlikely in motorsport, because I don't think bronze is a particular material that suits motorsport. Maybe a retro, possible. But definitely aviation. I sort of gave a clue a little earlier. 2020, we've now got two incredible platforms of C65 and C60. Our dive collection, I think, is amongst the finest of any dive collection in the world today, frankly. And I honestly believe it's the best value dive collection of that quality anywhere in the world. Our aviation and motorsport collections are due now to be looked at. We're looking at them now. Aidan and I are working on those, sort of where we take the direction of those two arenas. I think with motorsport and the Rapide collection as it stands is the weakest of our collections. Yeah? It's got the most incredible case, but I don't think the design is quite right. And we're almost certainly going to change the case going forward, and probably toward one of the two platforms, the C65 or the C60 variations around that. And it will probably have less of a modern feel to it. It'll be slightly more retro in feel. Aviation, again, we have to think about where we position the look and the feel of aviation watches. We moved away from the Bechufen look, which is the ubiquitous look of aviation, and I don't think we've quite cracked it. So where we head is actually live dialogue at the moment. But 2020 it's got several things going on in 2020. Life's like that, isn't it? So 2020 is the year of motorsport and aviation for us, and it's also going to be the year of the chronograph. That doesn't mean SH21 necessarily, but it will be the year of the chronograph you'll find for CW.
That leads into the next question actually. We've got the C65 Trident Diver, we've got the hand wound, we've recently had the automatic and the GMT, rumours of a C65 chrono, I believe. Is that going to happen?
2020 is the year of chrono.
And rolling on from the C60 Mark III, you've got the great move forward to do quick release on the bracelet. Will that be going
Yes.
over into the 65?
Yes.
Yes. Coming probably around about mid-May, we'll be launching 2 new bracelets, both in 20mm and 22mm. And what we're going to be doing that's different this time is in our own offices in Maidenhead, we'll be applying different end pieces, so we should be able to cover the vast majority of all the ranges.
Yeah.
But they will all carry quick release on the bracelet.
I mean, I must say, I mean,
And there is an example over at the back there.
I mean, have you seen the quick release? I mean, I know some of you are absolutely wowed by it, but it is, I think Adrian tells me, and I believe everything Adrian tells me, that we are the 3rd or 4th manufacturer in the world to create a quick release bracelet. It is not an easy thing to do, and one of the advantages we've got as a business is that Jörg Bader, who is our partner in Switzerland, Jörg's early career was yeah, she's just signed in.
The oxygen mask.
Jörg's early career was in bracelets, and in fact he created the butterfly clasp. He wishes he patented it because he feels very, very wealthy man, and I hope he does. But he created the butterfly clasp, and we set Jörg the challenge of working out how we could produce a quick release stainless steel bracelet that wouldn't cost £350. And it's gone up slightly. The bracelet itself will be £125 as opposed to £100. But that's like incredible. It's £100 on top of the price
Can I just correction? It'll be 155 instead of 120. Just in case you're thinking.
Sorry, but it's a remarkable achievement, and it's as I say, the differential is £100 against a leather strap or a hybrid strap. It's incredible, and it's something that again marks it out from most everybody else. So yes, it will be developed.
Thank you. The C65 Pepsi bezeled GMT seems to be received very well. Any prospect of a black and red Coke version for those of a different persuasion? Or preference rather?
AC Milan. We have more likely head towards Inter Milan for any football fans. Yeah, we've been pleasantly surprised by in fact, not really, because I think at Edinburgh the reaction to the Pepsi C65 was phenomenal, wasn't it? And we kind of knew then that it probably had legs, but it's been even better than that. It's been hard to keep up with.
You will have seen we've been struggling to stay in stock and keep it on sale since we launched it, really. But I think Adrian is looking at new colour, 2-colour bezels, not just in the C65. We may even consider it in other ranges as well.
Well, we will introduce into the C60. It's which colours we go for and why. But yeah, two-tone. One of the other trends in watch world at the moment is two-tone, whether that be in bezel or indeed two-tone in terms of gold versus black particularly. So two-tone is one of the big trends. You might see some more two-tone watches coming through over the next 12 months, 18 months.
And staying on the 65 and colours, any other colours envisaged for the automatic or the GMT, possibly as you've done with the hand wound going khaki?
I doubt we'll go khaki again. That's not been a great success. Although I think we may well go khaki in the field watch at some point. Sorry, John. Yeah. So, you lost your mind.
No. I was going to let somebody else.
All right. Let somebody else answer. Not much.
I've still got plenty more though.
Okay, good man. Yeah.
Hi, first of all, thanks for having us, guys. I really appreciate it. 2 questions. First and foremost, there has been a huge resurgence in British watchmaking over the last 5-10 years, and I'm led to believe that the government was threatening companies to support them and bring apprentices or give funding to upskill people to get into this industry. Have you experienced that in the crystal ball? What has, have there been an appetite, or has there been support from government to try and bring British watchmaking back on the map?
Not yeah, I mean the present bodies, to be honest, haven't really pushed it, but I know Mike is in discussions. I don't think we can say too much right now, but there are moves afoot to do something.
The resurgence of the British watch industry is of interest to all of us involved in it. We're a British brand, and as you know, we manufacture in Switzerland. Somebody else was talking and asking this question earlier. And did I, why not made in Britain, why not made in England? The reality is there is no infrastructure that allows any commercial watch brand to do that. And I personally don't think in my lifetime that's likely. I'm not even sure it's necessarily advisable. Promoting the British watch brands per se, there can be some manufacturing, and we have one of the in our midst we have one of the finest watchmakers in the world, in Roger Smith, based in the Isle of Man, whose watches sell from £250,000 upwards. And Roger is a friend of the brand, and Crystal Wall. We are in discussions about how we can get the British watch industry better recognised, firstly by the government. The governments are very keen to promote British watchmaking. The problem is, at the moment, the bodies of British watchmaking are fusty. They're not of 20, in my view, in Roger's view, they're not of really 2019 particularly and beyond. And there is no actual database today of British watchmaking. You can't go anywhere and find out how many brands, how many watches they're selling, anything about them. There's no collective database. And one of the things that we're keen to do is to build a database. And that's a barrier for the government. When people say British watchmaking, they're looking for, well, what is it? And they can't go anywhere. So there's work to be done, and we want to be in the vanguard of promoting British watchmaking in all of its guises, including British brands. But that's going to be something, hopefully, later in the year, we'll have something more to say about. It's a bit under wraps at the moment.
Thank you. And the second question, you've alluded to a field question.
Yeah.
Again, looking at trends in the watch market, again, over the last 5-10 years, you've seen a lot of military watch trends appearing and different brands getting on board in different ways. What's the plan for Chris Ward? Suggest wait a couple of days or a week or more. There's some big announcements coming on that front.
Yeah, there's a couple of brands have already made announcements in the military field. Yeah. We'll probably make one in a couple of days.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Am I okay to ask a second?
Yeah, as many as you like.
Sorry, I've got a frog in the throat as well. So I work for Manchester Met University, and there's quite an interesting development with Roger Smith.
There is indeed, I'm very familiar with it.
So for those of you that don't know, Roger Smith is partnering with Manchester Met University to look at new materials for watchmaking to produce a watch that does not need servicing. Now, I do not work in an academic arena per se, but obviously I've been watching this extremely closely, and it's really interesting that they're partnering with MMU. Could you see yourselves doing something like that with another university? Obviously, up the road, the competitor, Manchester University, they do tend to make different materials. Obviously, you've heard of graphite, etc., I'm sure, which obviously is a big game changer. Would you see yourselves sort of being interested in working with or partnering with the university in terms of looking at new materials?
Well, we're also, as I'm very familiar with what Roger's doing with Manchester Met, and for those of you who don't know, it was announced about 2 weeks ago in New York at a special occasion that that work that is being done with Manchester Met, effectively it's based on very very small micron coverings of all interior watch movement parts with a carbonized finish. What effectively that means is that there will be no need for lubricants in watches. There'll be no wear during anybody's lifetime of the interior movements of those watches, which means, as you rightly say, watches will not require servicing in the future if that transpires. And Roger is working incredibly closely with them. It's a very, very, very exciting proposition. And all I can say is because of our relationship with Roger and our knowledge of what's going on, I would hope that at the right moment, when there's a lot of work to be done, this is not something that's going to happen overnight, that we will be in the vanguard of that. I doubt that we will need to go and work with somebody else. I think we can get on the coattails of that amazing work that's going on at Manchester Met. For me, it's one of the most exciting things going on. And I was talking to somebody about F1, back to watchmaking and what is the role of British watchmaking. I don't see a volume industry in the future. We had our opportunity and threw it away 150, 200 years ago, or certainly 100 years ago. And we're not going to go back there. It's a bit like the car industry to some extent. But F1, we lead the world. What we're good at is innovation. What we're good at is out-of-the-box thinking in this country. What we're good at is fantastic craftsmanship. And in people like Roger and Manchester Met, we've got the possibility of really transforming watchmaking. Not about volume manufacture watchmaking, but transforming watchmaking with that sort of innovative practice. I think that's where we should focus our energies on, rather than trying to have a big volume industry. Fine if people can do it, but they won't be able to do it in my lifetime at prices that we think people are prepared to pay, and I doubt they'll ever be able to replicate the quality and consistency of the Swiss. I think the Swiss have been doing it rather well for a rather long time. But that is a really fantastic work Manchester Met doing. Very exciting. Gosh, this is going live. That's me. Ooh, I'm glad you. Hello, Roger.
Hello.
Hi.
As someone who's in like the early 20s, what I tend to get like bombarded with on social media is internet-only brands or like Kickstarter watches or things like what we refer to as like fashion watches, like Daniel Wellington, Movement, Vincer, or stuff like that. Obviously, because they must make a really large amount of revenue off the back of they are relatively cheap watches. Is that something that you guys are aware of? And in your own sort of design and marketing, do you think about age demographics? Like, we want to have a watch that will appeal to people who are, say, like my age, or people who are like 30, 40, 50? Because I personally like things like the Pepsi and stuff, and like vintage style watches. I'm a big fan of the GMTs and things like that. But most of the people my age aren't interested in that kind of thing. They want these sort of really Bauhaus, minimal, dead thin quartz watches, and that's not your kind of thing. But I was wondering, are you aware of those kind of trends, and do you think about them and go, how can we sort of try and tap into that age demographic to, increase the brand awareness for people who will become, as they get older, watch enthusiasts for more vintage things? Because obviously it's a big learning curve. You start with one thing, you move different brands as you get older. If that makes sense.
A lot of sense. Anybody want to pick that up?
Even when we started, our quartz range always allowed somebody access into, let's call it the world of proper watches. And we do know that people will progress from a quartz watch into a mechanical watch, and then maybe a greater complication. In terms of the Bauhaus style, we've had certainly a few designs. We did a 595 slimline ourselves. It was mechanical though, not quartz. But what we do find is that quartz watches are a diminishing part of our range. So we're in 2005, 2006, they may have represented 50-60% of the range, and very quickly over time, down to about, maybe 10% now, something like that. So it may well disappear. So the opportunity for young people to maybe get in at a quartz level is probably going to diminish over time. But I think at the same time, there's other things happening in the watch industry, like smart watches and connected watches.
Yeah.
That's something that we are aware of and something that we're doing in the background, just thinking about now.
Well, I think you guys do a really good job anyway in terms of your sort of your pricing structures, because I always, when you've been touching the watches, and I'm sure everyone agrees, they do feel much more solid and much more, well, they just feel better than what they actually being charged at, which I think at the same time is a good thing for people, let's say, my age-ish,
Sure.
to get into, because you think this watch is under £1,000 and it certainly feels like better than a lot of watches you can get for that price range.
Well, they are.
Yeah, they
No
are.
doubt about that.
But
It's
they
the-
just are.
But it's the business model that allows us to do that.
Yes.
So it's not like a no-frills brand. You get all the frills with our
Yeah,
brand, but
definitely.
our business model just allows us to be cheaper than some of the other brands that are out there.
And your designs are quite minimal anyway, so
I mean, what do you think the average age is of a Chris Ward watch buyer? Average age?
I mean, I don't want to.
It's a good job the camera's facing
Right,
this way.
Well, I mean, exactly. Yeah.
What would you think it is?
Well, I'm not too sure, because I mean, I'm 24 and I've come with my friend and he's 24. You know, you all look young for your age, but I'm not too sure, to be honest, because, like, for example, my dad's in his mid-50s and I told him today I'm going to this event for Christopher Ward, and he went, who? But my dad's quite new to watches anyway. He's had like a little Timex his entire life, and he retired and he bought an Omega Planet Orchard, and now he's kind of like, right, one and done, that'll do, that's nice, and things like that. But I'm not too sure. I think it just determines.
I'll tell you.
You know, obviously.
I do.
Yeah.
The average age of our buyers is about 41.
Oh, okay.
We have quite a lot of people, therefore, who buy in their 20s, and quite a lot of people who buy in your 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
We don't actually think it's about those traditional socio-demographics. We've developed a sort of our own demographic model, which I'm not going to share because it's
Everybody be doing it.
Turn the camera off.
it's unique to the watch industry.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's about attitude, and it's about life cycle, where you are in your life, and what you're like.
Yeah.
The design issue is a slightly different one. So we appeal to a very wide range of ages. We've got, and increasingly to a slightly, it's coming down. So the average age is coming down all the time. What we noticed, and no doubt there'll be a question about, say, the logo. I mean, we're a bit of a left of centre brand, so it seems appropriate that we should have a logo left of centre as well. But actually, what's happened is every time we changed over to the new logo, sales went up on like-for-like ranges. So Trident Mark II,
Yes.
we just changed from the old the previous logo to the current logo. Sales stepped up. That was the only thing that changed.
Yeah.
And also what changes, the age profile comes down a bit as well.
Okay.
So I think,
And our international.
and our international mix goes up as well, which is absolutely right. So age is not really the barrier. It's more to do with the psyche of the individuals. And as Chris says, there are some people, young people, who will not want to, will use their mobile phone and or the connected watch and will not be interested in a watch at all. At some point in your career, however, particularly if you're going up a particularly professional route, and that can be in any industry, a managerial route, for instance, at some point, particularly for men, the watch becomes a symbol of something more than just something to tell the time. And that's when people tend to become interested in watches. Not entirely, because it can be driven by what your dad said to you, it can be driven by something you read about, a James Bond film you saw. It could be anything. Any of those things gets people into watches. But often it's your peer group and what they're interested in, and how you demonstrate that you're part of that peer group. And that tends to start in the mid to late 20s. And as Chris says, what we're about is the whole thing that we're about is trying to, I mean, it sounds a bit precious, doesn't it? But trying to kind of democratise luxury watches. And that's why, for us, it's really important to get those 20-odd-year-olds, because once they buy into the Chris Ward brand and they can afford to, we tend to have people who stay with us for a long time and buy more and more. So but we don't think about age, we think about where they are in their life stage, really.
But you come across as an honest brand anyway, which is like my personal sort of appeal to the company. It seems like down to earth, it's very normal. There's no snobbish elements that you might get with, I don't know, a different company. It comes across.
How does that come across?
I don't know now. Well, I kind of like, for example, it's just quite a minimal logo. It's just quite. It's not normal is not the way to describe it. It's just very nice and simple. All the designs are very. Again, I like simple, but at the same time, I quite enjoy that sort of vintage throwback. Like some of the models have that sort of Explorer 2 kind of design, and obviously.
And that's a big trend at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'd love to get a white dial Polar Explorer 2, but you know, money. I don't know. I'm not too sure if it's one specific thing. You just get the impression of when you see Christopher Ward and the watch designs and just how you are on say social media and the branding. Yeah. It comes across as kind of like just a genuine thing as opposed to it's all the way up here and it's unattainable. It's that kind of.
It's I mean, we try and be. Well, we are bloody normal, but there's no airs and graces. But it is interesting that you say that, and I know there's Helen McCall, our head of marketing, will be watching this somewhere down south at the moment. She'd be delighted to hear that expressed back because
you're welcome.
She says thank you, I'm sure. Thank you.
Which watch do you want?
Well, I'll take this box, and then that'll do for me. Yeah. Someone take this off me.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Thanks for having us again. Since the brand started, sort of going back to what you said about the watch being the best value for money, how difficult has it been to maintain that balance between attainability and quality?
I think it's been easy, really.
I think it comes back to, I mean, some of you probably know the phrase that we wanted to create the cheapest, most expensive watches in the world. That doesn't fit now in terms of the marketing, but it's in the DNA. When we got into the industry, we're used to the normal retail markups. And so when we say our prices are 3 times cost, that's what they are. And that tends to be the norm. It won't be in Primark, but generally in most of the high street brands which we've grown up with, it's always been that sort of multiple. So we've never been in a world that says we should charge 10 times cost or 12 times or 15 or 20. And we couldn't actually look ourselves in the face. My mother's favourite phrase was, how much? Surely that's not right. Mike's mother definitely said, Michael, you can't possibly charge that much. And so that's very firmly in our DNA. And so what we progressively try to do, and you see it with this range, is live to that mantra, but keep putting more value in. So we even more live up to that. And I think today is an important day because I think above any range we've ever produced, this is clearly lives up to that dream. And so we need to hold on to that and then build that across all of our ranges. Not that it isn't really true there, but keep putting that more value in, get the economics of the business better, keep giving it a better deal to the customer, and gradually, you know, we turn over £10 million. We're a flea, aren't we, really, in the industry, but we keep doing that. You can see what we've done with the box, which I'm probably more excited about than the racks of watches. We give them away. People listen to me today as well. We look at this bamboo and everybody starts singing on the old bamboo. Well, no, these guys.
Is that right?
Yes.
Right.
And
theme song.
And so that's what we try to do. So we try to be innovative, but we've always stuck with that mantra, and we're going to shift now.
Yeah. I know what Chris means. What Chris means is the philosophy is easy to retain. Actually, the practice of continuing to increase the quality of our product is not easy. And that's the challenge that we set ourselves. So we're not an easy business. We're not easy people to live with. It's not easy for our suppliers. It's not easy for our designers. it's not easy for our engineers because we're constantly pushing them. And that's just a kind of a restlessness and a way we are. And so to continue to develop, because it would be, why bother changing a really successful Trident Mark II? What the bloody hell is the point? Well, the point was because we can do it better. Yeah? And already, I said to somebody earlier, there's a fantastic story around that, the bezel, which is my favourite part of this watch, because I remember very well the day that Adrian, Jorg and I spent in London going around every single watch shop. They nearly threw us out of Omega on Regent Street, wanting to listen and then record on our iPhones. This,
It was like Goldilocks and the Three
This was, yeah. Because you know there are, quality sometimes is invisible. It's a sense. There's a sense. You get that when you have a really quality car. It just feels right. You know, BMWs feel right around you. They're well put together. You know, a Seat isn't as well put together. It's a good car, but it's not as well put together. That noise and the absolute precision became a golden fleece for us in the development of Trident Mark III. So we wanted the best in the world. The bad news is we've only created the second best in the world, because we learned in our research that Rolex, God forbid, God rest them, they have the best by a mile. So we set our case manufacturer the task of reproducing at least as good as Rolex's unidirectional bezel.
You can be the judge.
He hasn't achieved it, so he's gone. He hasn't quite achieved it. But what we think, and honestly, so I can say it's not the best, which hurts me, which means there's a Trident 4. Yeah. But I think this is the second best in the world. Honestly believe that. And we changed the entire mechanism to achieve it. There's every other than Rolex and others, everybody else uses a certain spring mechanism to produce that unidirectional bezel. We have changed that mechanism completely. And they, I suppose, have had a bit longer to master it than we have, but we're about the second best. Now, most people will never know that, you know, that story and why, but we can, and we can go better. We can still go better. And that's why we're not easy to work with, and that's what drives us. The brand is about quality, not about price. Price is just kind of, as these guys have just said, it's kind of, that's our business model, that's our belief. It's 3 times. But the brand is about quality. It's not about price. The fact that you get that price is a really great surprise and nice thing to have. But you're buying into quality when you buy into this. That's what drives us. It's absolutely about the quality of the product. And I honestly don't, you know, Peter's just said it. Yeah, I will fight anybody who thinks there's a better dive collection than Trident Mark III for the price. I just don't believe it's out there. And we've looked at everybody in detail on every aspect of Trident Mark III is better than it was in Trident Mark II. Every single aspect of it. That's why we did the Trident Mark III, because it could be better. And when we know we can really push it out again, you'll get Trident Mark IV.
Awesome. One last thought as well.
Sorry. I forgot to ask.
What watches, not to divert the attention away from Christopher Ward, what watches got you 3 into watches?
Well, I can answer that.
Well, I had an Oblong Cassidy watch for Christmas one year, but I don't know if that counts particularly.
I got Timex when I was 7. The watch that really got me interested was my parents bought me a Tissot for my 21st birthday.
I was the same.
Yeah, and that's I've still got it. It's got pride place in my collection back home. It needs a new strap, which I must get sorted. But that was my first mechanical watch, and that's what made me interested in it. I'm a posh scouser. I come from Formby. Cheers.
Somebody just said was.
Thank you. A very simple question. You used to sell ladies' watches. You don't be doing that anymore. I wonder if that was going to come back.
I was just speaking to one of the audience about, yeah, it was a conversation I was just having not so, just an hour or so ago. Ladies' watches is a difficult market, completely different in the way they think, what they want. They're a little bit more fickle than men. They change with fashion, and it's not really the focus of the business at the moment. It may well come back in the future, but just a couple of years ago, what tended to happen as watch sizes were beginning to move down, women started wearing men's watches. We certainly noticed that, and in our designs and even in our marketing now, we don't sell to men either. We sell watches, and those watches are there for both women and men to buy.
We're an age-end business.
Yeah, we're an age-end business. We did try a while ago to introduce extra small straps, just to cater for larger watches for thinner wrists. But we found there was no need to do that. So if we have got women customers, and we have, and a lot of them, they're certainly buying our men's ranges at the moment.
It's all right. It was alluded to a couple of questions ago about the logo, and it's often debated forums. There's no right or wrong. It's more, do you guys think you finally know what your brand identity is? You know, for the last decade, it's the third one. You think you've got it now that will go forward
for a long time. I mean, it represents the brand best of all the ones we've had. I mean, I do remind people that Rolex is on their 28th logo. People forget that. You go back to the leading brands that we find very familiar, like Nike. You know, they're on about their 9th. So who knows? But no, this is working. As I say, we're kind of a left of centre company, so it kind of suits us. But you know, so, you know, but it's with us for a good while. We do have variations. So we have the logo, which can be separated off. On the Trident 3, you'll have seen it's printed at 12 o'clock as well, very subtly. The Repeat collection had only the logo as opposed to the name. And where it suits the design of the watch, we also, in our brand Bible since 2016, have the potential to put Christopher Ward as a centre 12 o'clock name as well. We built in flexibility, but 85–90% of it is left of centre where it can be. And I know it's not to everybody's taste, but we love it. And we're commercial animals, and if it was a disaster, we'd have changed it by now. The opposite occurred, as I said in answer to the question earlier. Every single watch we replace with it, sales went up.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see what the social outpouring of radio ever is versus the reality of the situation.
Yes,
We've done a rebrand at work as well, the same thing, everyone's up in arms.
People don't like change.
But you swiftly forget and move on.
Yeah.
You shouldn't want to be the best thing.
So no, I think it's a valid point. Are we going to change again? Not in the future.
Thank you.
Well, anybody else? Thank
you. You mentioned earlier about the bezel mechanism and being second best in the world. And those sorts of things, you can only really assess or believe as a consumer if you can sort of touch and feel it. You said quality is something you just sense. So how, given that you only sell online through one sort of retail outlet effect, what are you thinking of in terms of ideas to allow people to sense that quality in a different way other than just reading, specs of different things? Or
it's a really good question, and one that we do wrestle with quite a lot. I don't think we've cracked it perfectly yet. I think things like video, things like photography, in terms of the website, It's a goal that we are setting ourselves. We'll be launching a new website around about next spring, this time next year, and there'll be enhancements in terms of the way in which you can sense the product there. I think also you're going to find, whilst we have no interest in owning real estate or renting real estate on high streets around the world, I do think Christopher popping up physically, a little like this sort of thing, is something that's going to be happening a lot more. So we can take the watches to the people, if you will, and communicate not just the watch, but communicate the brand as well. So I think on a worldwide basis, we will pop, whether it's pop-up shops or pop-up events, I think Christopher Ward will begin to emerge much more in a physical form than it's ever been before.
That's right. You mustn't forget as well, we've got the 60-60 guarantee, so people can order a watch in the comfort of their home, look at the watch, they've got 60 days to assess it and send it back, and we pay the postage both ways, so there's nothing to lose really.
Absolutely, I think that's fantastic. It's something you've got to keep. I think it's getting them to order in the first place. Absolutely. I think coming back to the comment you said earlier about the nature of the brand and that people kind of stick with you and go on the journey with you as you develop, and probably most of us in this room have sort of been following you and buying watches from you for a number of years, and then probably intended to do so. So I think that idea of having regular pop-up things kind of fits nicely with that, because you're constantly engaging with your ever-growing clientele who keep coming back to buy more, which I guess a lot of watch manufacturers generally only sell single watches to individuals and then move on to somebody else.
It's a really good point, and it's and not only is it's two-way as well, because the feedback we get when we meet rooms of people like yourself is just invaluable. I mean, at least two ideas in the conversation that I've just had before the Q&A are things that are now likely to happen sooner than they would have done if we hadn't had this meeting. So it works both ways. So it'd be foolish of us not to get out more and not talk to you guys more.
For us, it feels great. It feels great that we can contribute then to the brand and give you ideas and you act on them.
Well, if I remember, I might be wrong, but I think you had suggested back in Edinburgh, because I know you were at Edinburgh, that what about utilising the collective Christopher Ward ownership to have an input into design?
Yeah.
Was it?
That's right.
I remember it well. And we've not there yet, but we've been having discussions and dialogue between Helen, Adrian, and myself about that idea. Because I do think it was one of the highlights for me of Edinburgh, without wanting to blow smoke in your backside, in that we have an unusual connection, I think, as a brand. And three of us have worked in many brands, and in a brand such as Early Learning Centre, believe me, the connection between the company and the people who bought the brand and were interested in the brand was intense. I mean, there's nothing, your children are rather special to you, so this is even greater. It's quite astonishing. And how we take some of that and yet retain that sort of lacquer. We don't want to become a horse designed by committee, i.e. a donkey, but how we get the inputs from you guys and feed that in the right way at the right time is really important. So your idea that you floated in Edinburgh is alive and being kicked around at the moment. So. Excellent.
Thank you. I must say I'm really enjoying this session and learning a lot from it. One thing...
you must get out more.
Another interest as well. It's always intrigued me why you picked the name Christopher Ward as a best of three falls and one submission.
We got all the women in the street to take a vote on who's the most handsome.
He lost.
I lost, so they put as consolation they put my name on the diary.
It wasn't very scientific in actual fact. We spent a lot of time, as all startups do, don't they? Get the name, I get the name, I get it. We could easily have been called MPC, Mike, Dick, and Chris. And then we thought, maybe not, because that's a bit close to IWC. At one stage, it was going to be Fennel and Worswick, Fennel is my wife's maiden name. Worswick is his wife's maiden name.
And my wife's family made long case clocks.
In Lancashire, the Worswick. Yes. Well, we felt that was a little bit sort of out of date. Fennel Worswick sounds like something from Dickens. And then we also talked about wanting to be a real brand, not not creating a name from nowhere. And therefore, we said, well, what about our names? Well, Mike France for a British brand isn't perhaps the best. We'd have taken more money in France, but Peter Ellis, bit vanilla. Christopher Ward has a lovely look to it, so I said, let's go with Christopher Ward, and he was delighted to do
I think it was because they wanted to keep my feet to the cause because they delegated most of the way onto me.
That lasted about 6 months. But no, so it has an English, I think it really has an English lilt to it. It scans really well when Christopher Ward, the right amount of syllables for a, and it was real, as Chris says. It was real. It wasn't us hiding behind some nom de plume that wasn't us.
Well, what's Nate for Liverpool, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was the story really. There was no fight, and but I wish there could have been. No, we should create that story. That'd be much more interesting.
Thank you.
There's a question down here.
An old friend.
Here comes trouble.
Yeah, as back to challenges, how's the challenge of creating a teal vessel going?
Not very far at the moment, I don't think. But if there's a football team like AC Milan that are playing teal, then it might just get it.
It's not yet on the drawing board, if I'm perfectly honest. No. But it's a good reminder.
Yeah, I just remember in my early days of skiing, Rossignol had a teal ski, and it's so tolerable just because the colour.
In ceramic.
No, not ceramic.
One of the limitations of ceramic is the amount of colours that you can do it in without investing fortune. We use a very high quality Korean manufacturer of ceramic, but they have quite a limited, to get that quality, it's quite a limited colour palette. So anything off it often ends up not quite what you want. So not teal, not just yet, I'm afraid. Come on, Alex, get moving, mate. Yeah, you're looking slim already.
You're back to make the relationship between SH, because I don't really know how to pronounce
You mean
the
synergy horologic?
Yeah, and Meistersinger.
Well,
because there is a link, isn't there?
Firstly, there is no synergy horologic. It's
Right.
Chris Ward SA.
Okay.
In 2014, 2nd of July, we merged, and synergy, for sure, vanished. Yeah. And the relationship with Meissing is we produce nearly all of their watches for them.
Yeah, it's been, it was a relationship that was there before we joined with SH, and it's a relationship that's it's a relationship that's been good and will be in the future.
Thank you. Simple one. A couple more technical new models. Anything coming up on the C1 moon phase?
Yes. Have a look in your loops.
Yeah, very early on in the Loop magazine, there's a...
Anybody know what happened on July the 20th, 1969?
50 years space.
Well done, Alex. He's written a copy, so Alex is our copywriter, by the way. He's, thank you. Yeah, man landed on the moon, Neil Armstrong, etc., etc. And we were all lads at the time, and one of 600 million people who watched it. There are probably a few in the room who did as well. But how many of you watched the moon landing? Yeah, most of us. One of the yeah, but I mean, one of the great televisual occasions of the 20th century. Its 50th anniversary. We felt it couldn't go by without us celebrating it. And our moon phase movement, it's an adaptation of the moon phase movement. The dates around the perimeter of the watch. but our JJ Caliber 04, which is the moon phase, is a remarkable movement. I mean, accurate for 128 years without fail. The only perpetual moving moon phase in the world. I don't think we made a record of that. So it's a perpetual moon phase. So what that means is that every other moon phase you see it doing that over time as it goes through the phases of the moon. Ours, every second of every minute of every day, is going gliding across the sky as per the moon does in reality. Fantastic movement. The moon glow is based on is about visually using loom to make this a really exciting watch. I'm really excited by it. And it's got a smoke glass dial, so you can see in part to the aperture, and you can see clearly through that. And the bottom half of the aperture is smoke, so you can see the moon all the way through. It just gets more visible when it gets to the top of the aperture. It's a really exciting watch. July the 20th. Be there or be square.
It's amazing.
It's a fantastic kit. We're getting a that's the sign of on TV, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want us to I mean, what? A couple more last questions?
Yeah,
couple more last questions.
Well, one personal one. Which is each of your favourite sport, and do you have a particular personal team within that sport that you cheer on?
I like hockey.
I'm a big fan of Milton Keynes hockey, aren't you?
The ladies team. Yes, football and Liverpool. And we will win the league.
Football and Everton, and we won't.
Football and Tottenham, yes, we will.
Just one last one from me, if that's okay. Third one. I'm sorry if somebody wanted to ask it. My third question. Somebody mentioned before at the back about marketing. I suppose it was really a question about marketing. So talking about organisations, other watch brands like Tudor, Rolex, Omega, etc. And they do huge, big marketing campaigns. And obviously they've got various personalities and sports people. And obviously they sell their watches, and I guess it's the technical excellence of their watches, if you like. And I think the chap at the back was talking about the fact that you don't make a big deal about that. And maybe that's something that you're missing a little bit, if I'm honest. I mean, the website's a lot better than it used to be. It's great. Obviously, those of us that frequent the forums talk about how Christopher Ward is perceived, I guess, by the general public, in that most people don't probably know who you are. And it's actually quite interesting. I'm walking around, this is probably the only time I've ever seen somebody else wearing a Christopher Ward watch other than me, which is great. But I can't help thinking that maybe you should be saying a bit more about, it's about the quality. You know it's there, we know it's there, but you can't see it. I don't know what the solution is to that. I'm not a marketing person myself, but maybe you should be taking it a little bit step further to say, hey, look, this is a great watch and this is why it's a great watch.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. We had and we advertise quite a lot in this country in magazine titles and in some press titles. We just signed a long-term deal, for instance, with the FT. Is that right? Yeah. But in November of last year, because we want to get the message out more, and as Chris has just said, some of that requires marketing dollars, let's call it. So, and we're not a wealthy brand in terms of, so we have to earn all of our marketing dollars. But hopefully within the next period of time, we'll have more marketing dollars available to us as the business grows, etc. And it's not a secret, because we've gone out there and said we're looking to bring for the first time external money into the brand. The business is now set. The platform is really, really powerful and strong, and it deserves to have a wider audience. It really does in our modest view. It deserves a wider audience, but we really believe that. And it has something unique. So we will be hopefully advertising more. How we advertise is interesting, how you get that message across, because we're not going to, as Peter said earlier, we're not going to have 216 shops that you can buy Chris Ford in the UK, for instance. In November, we tested a campaign in London which used huge transvision screens in mainline stations and also crossed what's known as 16-sheet cross-track in tube stations. I'm not going to give you the results of it, but it was very powerful. We connected.
Well, viral marketing, obviously, you don't necessarily need to spend huge amounts. It's just the thinking behind it.
And one of the things, and part of the thinking, and part of what we're about at the moment is the line that we're using is do your research, which is quite a bold and challenging statement to make. But what it's really trying to communicate, in a sense, is look, check us out. You know, get on our site. Come and people take 6 to 9 months sometimes to buy. Somebody in here hasn't bought one of our watches and they've been following us for years. Yeah, there you go. But no, that's not unusual. You know? But most people who check us out, when they learn the story, when they read the forums, when they gain confidence, and that's when they begin to trip over checking it out, and then they become advocates. What we have is an incredibly high level of advocacy to watch, incredibly high. You guys are a testament to that in a sense.
Well, I think we enjoy it still being a bit of a hidden secret because that keeps the prices low. We know the quality's good, but I'm a bit worried for the future.
No. Honestly, don't be. I mean, you either trust us or you don't trust us. We're not interested in having loads of people so we can buy our watches, so we can make more margin. Yes, we want to be more successful and we will have more profitability to be able to fund more programs and more watches and improve things. But nothing's going to change in terms of the economic model. That is, I think you used the phrase, it's in our DNA. That's what we are fundamentally about. But we do want to get the message out more. And the London campaign, which is out of home rather than press, it's connected to the press, proved very successful. So I think as we get more of those marketing dollars, you're going to see us in different places in different ways. That combined with more popping up, that combined with more advocacy, that word of mouth thing,
spreading,
that viral effect gets bigger and bigger. But we've got a long way to go. We're operating in a market that, depending on which report you read, is anything between 32 and 50 billion worldwide. We've got a way to go before we become ubiquitous and you're bored with us.
Final question?
Final question, anybody?
Last one.
Yeah, this is actually a strange question, because you talked about pricing and you talked about the quality of the brand. Every so often you get like £100 off vouchers, a 15% discount. I'm sure that increases sales, but do you think it enhances the brand or cheapens it?
It's a good question, one that we constantly ask ourselves. I think you'll find that over time there'll be a little less of it. But actually, the responses are incredible, and at this stage of our life cycle, the more people we can get into the brand, the better for us. So we're still at a very low. The other thing about us is people see everything we do. We don't operate in the grey market. Yes, there's a bit of stuff going on eBay, etc. But effectively, you know all of our pricing all the time. The rest of the market, whoever buys a watch at full price, there's stuff going on all over the place. Even people like IDBC are buying back watches. Last year they spent £200 million buying back watches from retailers. What? And then they're there and to put back into the grey market to get rid of them quickly. We don't play that game at all. Yeah, we're completely open and straightforward about it. And if we can stimulate people to get over that line, one of those routes is through a voucher, particularly, which we send out 4 times a year, as you will know, with 2 customers with Lou. But over time, I think it's not far off where we want it to be, but maybe you'll see it slightly less.
Okay, guys.
Okay, pause up at the back, teas and coffees outside. If you haven't had a good look at the watches, they're still going to be there for the next couple of hours and maybe another hour or so. If you've got any questions, please ask any of us or any of the staff that are here. Yeah, please do. Thanks for coming.
Hi to the YouTube audience. We are just going on a little at the 600. This is the 40mm.
What is better?
And here we have the GMT.
It won't be a public, I assure you.
And we're just moving across to view the new packaging, which is coming out with the new Trident. There's an article about this in the new magazine. Chris, I'm on my way over.
Redesigned rotor now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for the blurriness. This is the blue GMT on the quick release bracelet.
How does it feel? You can go to jewelers. You go to jewelers, if you got one, just say, I've got check.
How does it feel? That is.
There you go. If anyone else would like a close-up, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching the live stream, and we hope to see you at one of our events soon.